Let's face it, guys. In order to have a shot of winning your fantasy football championship, you need to nail your first 2 rounds of fantasy football drafts right here, which means you actually want to combine a safe floor with someone who has just an enormous ceiling in those first 2 rounds of fantasy football drafts. And this draft strategy we're going through today, this is my favorite, particularly in redraft leagues, but it does have best ball applications because I believe this is going to break your league in 2024 fantasy football. And since I hit 10,000 subscribers this week, thanks to you guys, I'm giving away 5 FFN hats right now. And the 5 winners this week were Jihar Williams 1089, GSP 427, Justin Allen 9108, Willpower 77, and Not So Silent Majority 1. So congratulations to all of you for winning your free FFN hats. Email me at footballfanalystsnetwork@gmail.com. And again, guys, thank you so much for hitting 10K. And I'll give away 5 more free ones next week if I hit 11,000 subscribers 1 week from the time of this filming. And I only give them away to people who go down there, drop a like on the video, or subscribe to the channel, and tell me who their favorite sleeper defense is in Fantasy Football 2024. So please go down there, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me your favorite sleeper defense this year. So this particular draft strategy right here really contains 2 key pieces to it. The first piece is going to be with wide receivers. We're going to be targeting wide receivers that are expected to be on top 10 projected passing offenses in the NFL. That's step 1 right here. Step 2 is we're looking to target running backs who are going to be running behind top 10 offensive lines in 2024 fantasy football. So in wide receivers case right here, let's just look back at last year and see what the top 10 offenses did as far as passing volume goes in producing fantasy football wide receivers here. So on the screen right now, you can see all of the top 10 offenses in passing yards in 2023. And what you can also take away from it is 7 out of the 10 guys produced top 12. No, actually, top 10 fantasy football production on a points per game basis right here. And the points per game is really what I want to identify here, because the higher the points per game are, the more confidence it's going to give you in starting those guys on a week-to-week basis in an ESPN sleeper or Yahoo redraft league. So on this list right here, it just is a great idea to go ahead and pick a wide receiver who you are confident is going to be on a top 10 passing offense this year. And the only guys who did not do that, the Chiefs, the Jaguars, and the Bills' #1 wide receivers here. Rashee Rice, wide receiver 30 in points per game. Christian Kirk was a wide receiver 34 in points per game, and Diggs was only the wide receiver 15. Now, what's in common with the Chiefs and the Jaguars? Well, both of those teams had 2 top 5 tight ends in 2023. So those tight ends were still really valuable here. Obviously, that's where the majority of the passing volume was going to go. With the Bills here, obviously Dalton Kincaid played a factor as well, and James Cook broke out later in the year. But this is a 70% hit rate as far as wide receivers finishing with top 10 production at the wide receiver position in top 10 scoring offenses. So again, what we're giving you here is the safe floor, but also with an enormous ceiling in fantasy football. Now, when we look at this running backs list right here of running backs running behind top 10 offensive lines last year, it's not nearly as impressive. Like, let's just get that out of the way right here. In fact, there was only a couple of running backs with top 10 production running behind top 10 offensive lines last year. You had Jonathan Taylor, and then we had Gibbs and Montgomery, who had running back 11, running back 12 level production. But a lot of these guys were like high-end running back 2s, low-end running back 2s. We even had some running back 3s out of this scenario here. So this is not exactly the most productive list of running backs, and it may give you pause, like why is it going to be different this year right here? Well, let's keep in mind a couple of things with this particular list right here. So most of these guys on this list last year were not clear-cut running back 1s on their own team. You had guys like Jerome Ford, who wasn't even expected to be the running back 1 in Cleveland, and even when Nick Chubb went down, they were still giving a lot of carries and a lot of opportunities to Kareem Hunt, so he still didn't handle that. Isaiah Pacheco barely cracked 200 carries last year, and he was really the clear guy in Kansas City. And in fact, only 3 of the guys on this list had 250 carries plus. It was DeAndre Swift, Josh Jacobs, and Tony Pollard. The rest of the guys did not crack 250 carries here. And because of that, only 3 of those guys had first to second round draft capital in 2023. It was Pollard, it was Bijan, it was Eckler, and I'm talking about basically every single platform, whether it was best ball, whether it was a redraft league. So those are important things to keep in mind, because obviously since those running backs were not first to second round guys, the majority of them were not, you were getting a lot of these guys last year. I vividly remember getting someone like Montgomery or someone like Pacheco or somebody like Jahmyr Gibbs in those early to mid round picks, which ended up being really good values in some cases, mostly in a best ball format. But again, it's important to keep in mind that only 3 of them had 250 carries or more. So why is it different this year with running backs in particular, and why should we trust this draft strategy this year? Well, here's the number one reason, is that all of these guys, basically with the exception of guys like Austin Eckler and Josh Jacobs, most of these guys on this list had at least 4 yards per carry, and sometimes even the higher end guys had closer to 5 yards per carry. So in other words, offensive lines, the top offensive lines in this league, they breed efficient running backs at the NFL level. So what's missing with those guys? They obviously need the volume to go along with that super high efficiency here. Here's why it's different this year. So on the screen right now, we're looking at top 10 projected offensive lines according to Pro Football Network right here. So what we'll notice about all these teams right here: Eagles, Lions, Browns, Chiefs, Falcons, Colts, Jets, Rams, Packers, Vikings. Now, what we notice here is that a lot of these guys are actually first to second round picks according to ESPN and Underdog Best Ball Capital right here. You've got Saquon Barkley, back of the first round, early second round guy on ESPN. Jahmyr Gibbs, early second round guy. Isaiah Pacheco, second round. Bijan Robinson, first round. Jonathan Taylor, second. Breece Hall, first. Kyron Williams, second round. You've got some legitimate guys who, again, are going to get the guaranteed volume along with running behind a top offensive line in the NFL this year. And then of course you've got your mid-round sleepers, guys like David Montgomery. Someone like Jerome Ford this year is particularly ideal in a redraft format, because once Nick Chubb comes back, the likelihood that he'll be relinquishing a sizable amount of carries to affect his fantasy upside is going to be pretty high. So in a redraft league where your league mates are active, you can make a trade a couple weeks before he comes back, after you've basically squeezed all that you could out of Jerome Ford's impact in fantasy football. But you've also got other mid-round guys like Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler's another good guy to get at the back of your fantasy football draft, because reports out of Minnesota are that it's kind of a 1A, 1B situation in Minnesota right now with Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler. So there's a lot of good values here mixed with the high end first to second round guys that we know we're getting the safe floor from and the tremendous ceiling because they're running behind top 10 offensive lines in 2024. Now, when we look over at the wide receivers this year, what we need to look at is what are the projected top 10 passing offenses in the league? Well, we're using Vegas Insider for these projections right now, and what we can see is the projected top 10 quarterbacks as far as passing yards go this year: Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, Tua, Joe Burrow, Brock Purdy, Matt Stafford, Jordan Love, and Kirk Cousins right here. Now again, a lot of these guys, and especially at the wide receiver position, there's lots of mid to late round values here. There's plenty of guys here. You've got some early round guys right here. Obviously, you got guys like Tyreek Hill on this list, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase. Like, you've got really high upside early round picks here. But you also have guys like Rashee Rice. You have guys like Xavier Worthy. You have some extreme values in the Green Bay passing offense right here. Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, they all have a sub 100 ADP on ESPN right now. There are serious values that we can take advantage of here, and you want to take advantage of those guys because we know that the ceiling is going to be there in these types of drafts right here. So what are the important takeaways other than the ones that we just outlined here? Well, 7 out of those 13 running backs that we just went through are going in the first 2 rounds of fantasy football drafts on ESPN in particular. Now, there's only 5 wide receivers going in the first 2 rounds on ESPN, but there is a lot of like 3rd, 4th, 5th round guys like Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle. Like, there's plenty of like super good value, so we're still early picks. But what they're gonna end up doing here is they're gonna give you the flexibility still at the beginning of your draft to go with an elite quarterback or elite tight end right here. So let's go through a couple of examples of what we could do and how we could best utilize this draft strategy right here. So just looking at those two lists right there, what we can do in the first round is, let's just go ahead and take Tyreek Hill if you have like the 101, the 102, or the 103. I know there's a lot of talk about Christian McCaffrey maybe not being the best 101 pick. I still pick McCaffrey, but if I'm at the 102, I'm picking Tyreek Hill, and especially if he falls to me at the 103. So let's take Tyreek Hill in the first round right here. Then what we can look at here is somebody like a Kyren Williams or an Isaiah Pacheco in the second round if they fall to you. Now, granted, those guys both have higher ADPs in ESPN fantasy football, so let's say that they don't fall to you, right? What we could end up doing here is going with a guy like Devon Achane or James Cook in that range as well. Two very high upside guys, maybe not based on the offensive line play, but we will get back to those running backs a little bit later on who have those extreme values and are still running behind great offensive lines right here. So then let's go third round. Let's take an elite quarterback here. We've already got an elite wide receiver and we've got a really great running back too. Let's go with Josh Allen here in the third round. You've got your pick of the litter in all likelihood at quarterbacks this early on in the third round, given that you're taking the 102 or the 103 spot. You go ahead and you take Josh Allen here. Then you go ahead and grab a guy like Deebo Samuel or Cooper Kupp, who again, top 10 projected passing offenses, should provide an extremely high ceiling in the fourth round. Then let's go ahead and pair up Josh Allen with Dalton Kincaid in the fifth round. So we've got that elite quarterback tight end stack right here. We've got an elite wide receiver one who's got an extremely safe floor. We've got a great running back one, and then we've got a super high upside wide receiver two right here. Then what we can do to fill out the running backs is go ahead and grab a David Montgomery in just a couple rounds. Go target a guy like Jerome Ford later on in the draft, who again, running behind top 10 offensive lines and are going to give you that good ceiling right there. Or if you wanted to go running back here instead of wide receiver in the first round, go with someone like Bijan Breece Hall if you're in that like middle of the first round to back of the first round type of style right here. Bijan Breece Hall, both great offensive lines, both are going to be in great situations this year. Then look at the second round here. Puka Nacua is really the only wide receiver in this range that is with a top 10 passing offense here. And I'm not saying you can't take any of the wide receivers, but if we're following just this draft strategy right here, Puka should be the best one of the bunch. And this is kind of my problem with the double hero running back strategy. But again, if you want to take one of those guys, it's kind of hard not to go double hero when you have guys like Kyren Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs right in front of your face in the second round. So if you go double hero running back, then you're going to have to go with a wide receiver round 3. You got to do it for sure. You got to get someone like a Nico Collins or Drake London in the third round. And those are great picks to get. Obviously, both of those guys have super high ceilings. And really with a guy like Drake London, should have a pretty stable floor since he is the clear wide receiver 1 in Atlanta. And then go ahead, if you pick a Nico Collins, pair him up with CJ Stroud a round later. Because again, what we're doing here is we're going to go ahead, maximize the absolute floor of a running back in the first round who have a top 10 offensive line, but also give you that elite ceiling that they can provide you. Then if you want to go double hero running back, you get another extremely high ceiling guy. Hopefully you hit on both of them. Then you get a really high ceiling wide receiver in the third round, who again are both on top 10 projected passing offenses in 2024. And they go ahead and pair a guy like CJ Stroud up with Nico Collins. Now again, there are really good values on Underdog when we try to utilize this draft strategy. So if you do have interest in getting in an Underdog best ball tournament where there's no time commitment throughout the regular season, you just draft once and then you watch your team score the points as they go week by week, join on Underdog today using the link in the comments below and using code FFN to deposit $10. And when you do that, they will throw $250 of free bonus cash right in your face. They will literally throw free money at you to go play on Underdog or to get into some pick'ems, whatever you want to do with that money. You might as well use it in there because they're throwing it right at you. And if you want to utilize an Underdog best ball strategy, if you're new to it and you want to see a best ball draft strategy that are really, really valuable this year, click on this video right here.